Thanks everybody for joining. We'll get started in a few minutes here. Thanks everybody for continuing to hold. We'll get started in about 1 minute. All righty, good afternoon, maybe good morning, depending on where you're joining from. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend our Emerge virtual user group meeting. I know that for some of you, you've probably been sitting through a number of sessions, so thanks for hanging out here a little bit later with us. I'm really excited to be able to lead this panel conversation about digital transformation in civil infrastructure. If you haven't joined us before for any of the sessions, just a couple of housekeeping notes to keep in mind. Don't be worried if you don't see like the mute button or anything like that on your Zoom controls. You're automatically muted. However, we absolutely want everybody's participation and engagement. So feel free to utilize the Q&A feature. It should be at the bottom of your screen or maybe the top of your screen, depending on how you have your orientation. And to ask any questions that you have, you can start putting those in at any point. And feel free to utilize the chat feature if there is any kind of comments that you want to leave, reactions, anything like that. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce this esteemed panel that I have the pleasure of working with today. First up, Kevin Schlereth. Kevin is an Associate Vice President with HNTB. He's a registered professional engineer in the state of Ohio and a graduate of Ohio University with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. Kevin has worked as a technology SME for over 25 years in integrated design areas, including civil, rail, drainage, utilities, and structures. He built his first 3D model in 1995 and has had the unique opportunity of working with and training several engineering softwares, including Open Roads and Roads Geopack, Trimble, Civil 3D, Bentley Concept Station, OpenRail, and OpenBridge. Next up, Pat Lane from Montana DOT. During his 19-year career with Montana Department of Transportation, Pat has been in the front of many technology implementations and workflow improvements. After spending 11 years working with large national corporations like AT&T as a technical manager, Pat began his career at MDT in the Helena headquarters office working in information technology. His involvement in many of the innovations as well as project management led him to join the engineering operations team. Pat is currently leading the effort to implement digital project delivery at MDT. He's a designated state representative for the Highway Engineering Exchange program and enjoys learning from others about innovations and change that are reshaping the way transportation programs are delivered. And lastly, we have Craig Schripsema from OHM. Craig's an expert in construction engineering and constructability reviews. Craig has managed all manner of projects from start to finish for municipalities, county, and state agencies, and higher education clients. Over the past decade, Craig was instrumental to the success and growth of OHM's mid-Michigan market, and 5 years ago moved to Central Ohio. Craig leads OHM's Central Ohio construction engineering team with 30 years of experience designing and delivering solutions to infrastructure challenges. Over those 30 years, he has seen the slow embrace of technology to improve our project delivery and is excited by the more recent acceleration. Craig's an avid user of Appia, DocExpress, and BidExpress to deliver public infrastructure projects. And I am Gavin Diaz with Infotech. Again, I'll be serving as your moderator today. I've been working with local, state, and consultants for about the last 12 years at Infotech. Okay, so before we kind of jump right into this panel discussion and Q&A, just wanted to throw this screen up there and just kind of lay the foundation of what we're going to be talking about today. There's a lot of buzzwords that we've seen in the industry, since Federal Highways Everyday Counts. Prior to that, even buzzwords that you've heard today in the session. So I'm hoping what you're going to get out of this session today is some practical application from this expert panel around how some of those things have impacted them or they've been involved with through their work with local, state, federal, and AEC firms. So again, our goal today is to dive deeper into some of these trends with the panel to uncover practical applications and use cases that you can consider as you venture further down your DPD path with your agency or firm. Okay, so with that being said, I am just going to quickly launch our poll. So you should be getting a poll popping up on your screen right now. Some of the topics that we're going to cover today, just kind of curious from the group here, which of these are you most interested in hearing about? And maybe that'll give us an opportunity to, spend a little bit more time on some of those or anticipate some of the questions from the attendees. Feel free to, keep putting your responses in there. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into this moderated Q&A with our panel. Okay. So one of the observations that I've made is that most DOTs are further down the fully digital path than they even realize. If they would take a step back and see and look objectively at where they are in the digital world, they may be surprised even by that. I'm very curious for the panel here, each of your perspectives as you guys are among some of these leaders, where do you feel your organization is in respect to digital project delivery maturity? And whoever would like to start.
I'll go ahead and start. Yeah. This is Kevin. So our organization, we've been doing digital, at least on design to construction. We've been doing it for, scary is it's actually coming up on 25 years. Is the first time I actually delivered design data to a contractor. We did it for a job here in Ohio, and I got a phone call from the contractor, and he was absolutely shocked that I had this type of data when he was looking at my plan set that had been sliced up and put into a plan set versus the model that I had to give to him. So it's one thing that's fun about working at HNTB. We've pushed that envelope. We push it hard. We push it with our vendors, Infotech, Bentley, Autodesk. We push hard to try and get their products to work the way we need them to work. And so, yeah, I think we as HNTB, we're pretty far along. So with that, I'll turn it over to whoever I cut off. I'm sorry, whoever that was.
Oh, thanks, Kevin. First, Kevin, I've heard many stories like that, right? I can only speak for the Department of Transportation here when it comes to digital project delivery and where we're at as a DOT. A lot of colleagues out there that are doing amazing work amongst other DOTs, many states. And so the maturity level is often looked at from not just where we're at, but where our peers are at and how we can potentially look at information, look at data, look at workflows that they're advancing. And of course, the energy is that we would like to do some of those same things. So I'm blessed to be involved with a community of thinkers within the industry and within the DOTs. Here in Montana, we have a formalized program. We actually started our digital delivery path officially back in 2000. We have formed an executive steering committee. We have amazing support from our executive team. We have actually been able to get in front of our current governor and talk to him about our digital delivery program and how we hope that it will move the DOT forward. We focused mostly on pre-construction to construction, but as Kevin mentioned, we've also been providing model documentation to contractors for quite some time, for almost 6 to 8 years, so that they could use that in an information-only capacity for things like automated machine guidance, working with our inspectors. So there's a great deal of value there. Right now, we're just working on the maturation of that data and how to more effectively and efficiently get that to them. So workforce development's been critical to us as far as working with the team, making sure that our staff and our colleagues and those folks out on the front lines understand how we're trying to help them with more efficient data, with better technology. And I think what's happened is this has created an alignment of collaboration that allows for an ecosystem of sharing information more seamlessly and allowing, and I hate to say the word stakeholders, allowing all of our partners to really get involved. So we're hoping to continue to mature. It's an honor for us to be here and to talk a little bit about our story. And we will also want to mention, and I say we because I speak for a great team of people here, that we're humbly walking into this adventure and growing more each day, but also really excited about folks like Kevin who are embracing this and who are helping to share things with us that we're learning from. So thank you, Gavin.
Thanks.
This is Craig Schripsema. I'll add on there I agree with you, Gavin, that most DOTs are farther along than what they think they have. I mean, they've been doing some form of digital delivery way back to the Caperks days, and all of that aspect of it. So I think from a local agency aspect of it, they tend to be a little bit farther behind that side of things. Some of the bigger municipalities, yes, they're starting to engage that. The mid-size and smaller ones, I think it falls to us in the consultant world to kind of drive that and to be willing to introduce that. I think that's where we've seen the biggest benefit. I have yet to find one that says, hey, no, we don't want to do that. Especially when they hear, hey, Bid Express is free, or that, those kind of things are there's no cost to them. But I think we just got to be willing as a consultants to kind of, hey, push that forward and push that.
Thanks, Craig. And kind of transitioning on to the next topic of BIM, or building information modeling. What are some of the key benefits that you see that our audience attending today can expect from adopting BIM for infrastructure projects? And why don't we start with you, Craig, on this one?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest one there is really clash detection and with the underground utilities. That can be a huge asset. I mean, how many times have we been involved in a construction project and you don't really know what's underground, so you have to totally redesign on the fly because something's in your way. So I think if we can get that ahead of time, that can save a tremendous amount of time and effort in the field. Now, that said, it's in order to make that worthwhile and make that work, there kind of has to be a centralized push to get OOPS or MISTIG or those agencies involved in that and building that database. I mean, we've talked a lot about data here today and various things. Garbage data in equals garbage data out. So you've got to start building that and centralizing that so it has value. They can really see its full value. So that's the biggest area, I think.
Yeah, Craig, I'll piggyback onto that. We did a project in downtown Detroit, and there was supposed to be $25 million in utility relocations. Well, we spent an extra $1 million in survey to survey underground vaults, underground information. We did a lot of locates, did a lot of potholes. We spent some additional money. But what we found is we could actually navigate the design without having to relocate 25 million. We actually only had to relocate $5 million in utilities. So we saved 20 million minus the extra million in survey. So they saved $19 million on the job by spending money on survey up front to be able to find out where all these utilities are. And one of the things that was nice and similar to what you mentioned about us consultants is we were the PMC of the job. So we maintained that utility database as construction was going on. So as soon as they would cut up, open up the ground, they would find something that we didn't have on our plans. They would survey it. We'd track it back. We would put it back into our model. And then we could, do those relocations, as you mentioned, when we would find something, we could do it 10 times faster because we had such a wide range of information available to us at our fingertips.
Pat, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so Gavin, you asked about adopting BIM for infrastructure projects. And as a DOT or as an owner, we're looking at a huge portfolio of projects day in and day out. And I truly think that both my colleagues have talked about cost savings, talked about time savings. I think quality is something that also can be addressed. When we look at utilities, we look at that information that's more readily available. You can really dive into where this data is at from, a survey grade perception. You can look at those opportunities. And being a DOT, we're often tasked with doing more with less. And BIM practices allow us to actually do more and to create more with being smarter versus having less. Sharing information, creating, opportunities to reduce redundant work is also really, really big. How many times in the practice of over-the-wall engineering do we think we have a completed project, but yet due to environmental concerns, due to fish, wildlife, and parks or wildlife concerns, we have to do redesigns. So we're reworking because we don't have enough information out front of them. Well, BIM practices and BIM workflows have allowed us to move beyond that, which of course then leads to better, safer projects that get done quicker and are more effective. And that leads to benefits to the taxpayer who are funding those. And so really great opportunities for BIM for infrastructure. And once again, we just really like to move forward with that.
Thanks, Pat. I think you all three touched on really good responses there. And I kind of want to tie the last question maybe into this question a little bit. some of what you touched on the previous question of DPD and maturity levels, Craig. How would you all recommend overcoming organizational resistance or skill gaps for folks that are looking to transition to doing more BIM related efforts? Is there anything specific that we can point to that you think folks that are looking to take on some of this might want to start with this or consider this kind of thing?
I think the fear, I don't think fear is really justified. If you jump in and do it, most of these tools are, once you get in them, are really simple to use. And with anything, it takes repetition to get used to things. I mean, so the more we do it, the faster that goes. But with some of the technology that's been out there and that, you know, the integrations that exist, it really is not as scary as what you think it is. And again, a lot of times we've been using this. I mean, some of the tools just like text to speak. I mean, the ability to talk about your daily report and when you're in the field and not have to type it, that's a huge time savings, you know, from that aspect of it. And I mean, some of the old guys that, you know, are used to the paper reports and stuff like that, I mean, they still, they get nervous on it, but I found it, you pair them up with a young intern and they'll run circles around them and then they'll realize, oh geez, that's not that hard. That's where I've seen the best use. So
Thanks, Craig. Kevin or Pat, anything you guys want to add on top of that?
Yeah, I'll add just on the design, you know, design to construction and, you know, all the different technologies that are out there. I mean, they've come leaps and bounds from where they were when I first, like I said, I built my first model, and scary to look, it's 2025. That was 30 years ago now when I built my first one. So software, as we know, software is a huge, it's a business. It changes rapidly, you know, not quite as fast as AI, but pretty darn fast. And, you know, to Craig's point, you know, it's a lot of this is just kind of happening as you're doing your work. I mean, anymore, especially a lot of the technologies, whether you're talking Bentley or Autodesk, you know, they're kind of generating that three-dimensional data kind of for you as you're using the tools. So, you know, I agree with Craig. It's not something that's scary. You know, and I agree. The younger kids seem to pick it up a lot faster than the us gray-haired folks, but some of us have been around long enough that, you know, and been through the different iterations of the tools and seen how easy they've become to use and how quick we can generate stuff. I had a great young kid tell me one time, he goes, you know, Kev, I could really model, but I couldn't design. And I was like, yeah, well, design comes with age. And so, you know, I saw him again like 10 or 15 years later, and he was like, yeah, you're right. It comes with age. So, I mean, it's the tools have become much easier and to generate this information, and it's from all different disciplines. Pat, anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with just about everything I'm hearing. Thanks, Kevin. One of the things that we've experienced here at our DOT is that in the process of moving from what we refer to as lines and points to digital models, there is a skill gap. When folks are used to detailing and providing plan sets in 2 dimensions, and then you ask them to shift to a 3-dimensional world with modeling, it is a different process that requires looking at the project differently. And I am a firm believer that some pick up on that relatively intuitive, but there are those that we need to work with that have some potential organizational resistance based on the common theme that all of us hear. This is the way we've always done it. And I really think you need to focus on those folks. This is where we get back to the people side of change and change management. And I think if you have a true change management process that really meets people where they're at, and you begin to share with them how these changes will impact them, not just as individuals, but to allow them to deliver projects with more intelligence, less change orders, you really get to where they're at, and you can help that change pass through. As far as engagement and ownership, I honestly think that this starts at the top, right? I talked a little bit before about how having that executive support makes this that much more powerful. But it also needs to be a grassroots, if you will, presentation. When you begin to have those detailers, those designers, those engineers share with their peers the power of BIM, the power of digital project delivery, you'll be surprised at how much it moves just that much quicker. And so supporting skill gaps, supporting the engagement and the ownership, I think is critical to the process.
Thanks, great responses. So kind of transitioning on from BIM to geospatial technologies, in what ways are geospatial technologies and LiDAR transforming project design and delivery for owners? And maybe I'll adjust that question to, let's say, design and or construction. So if you want to add it for any of those pieces. So Craig, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think accessibility and accuracy improvements over the last couple of years have been tremendous. If you think back even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, to put a $30,000 GPS unit into every inspector's hands, it's not practical. I mean, those were dedicated to the survey crews and that's it. Well, now when you've got, for less than $10,000 or even less than that, I can put survey grade GPS units in the inspector's hands, and with the integrations through, field maps and Esri and into Appia and have those direct measurements, well, the time savings is tremendous, so from that aspect of it, that accessibility to that technology, the improvements in accuracy, the integration between different things. I mean, nobody wants to have 10 different softwares doing 10 different things and then have to go behind the scenes to integrate them. So the integrations we're seeing now, through Bid Express and through Esri and Apria and into Doc Express and some of those other things, that's game changing to me. So,
Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen LiDAR especially having a huge uptick. Contractors almost always now, they go scan the job before, once they've won it, they've been awarded, they'll go scan it. Sometimes they'll go scan it even before they win it. And, because the collection is fairly cheap, and it's accurate, just like Craig mentioned. I mean, the speed and the accuracy that you can generate this stuff on is pretty amazing. We had a project that we did, and it's probably going on 10 years now, but it was a kind of an infield area of an interchange, and they were taking material from it. So they just decided to LiDAR it and, generate a surface, and then LiDAR it the next day and figure out, and then they can figure out how much material is going and disappearing from that infield area. But I mean, you could do it so quickly. It's a huge time saver, and the accuracy is, ridiculous anymore. I mean, it's pretty crazy that anymore with some of the technology and a couple different control points, you can get almost survey grade accuracy from pictures. So, I mean, just the technology is changing so much, and it's amazingly rapidly changing and for the better.
Anything to add about geospatial technologies, Pat?
Oh, Gavin, I always have something to add. I think geospatial technology and geospatial data is changing how we work. A great friend of mine and a leader in the industry, Trish Stefanski, who has an amazing asset management program in the state of Minnesota. They have really shared visions on how to use geospatial data to manage assets. And we have to keep in mind that, of course, here in our DOT culture, not everyone's an engineer. We have to learn how to communicate engineering ideas and engineering information with people that might not have that skill set. And I think geospatial technology and the visualization that's provided, whether it be through LiDAR whether it be through a lot of the Esri tools, is literally allowing a different set of stakeholders to be involved with decisions that impact projects in, a more educational way. I really have been trying to keep my thumb on the National Geodetic Survey modernization effort that's taking place. I would encourage the entire audience to look into that and to understand the impacts that these modernization efforts are going to play with geodetics, with survey, with geospatial data, because as this information is being created and consumed more, there are technology changes happening that will affect all of us in this space. So thanks, Gavin.
Thanks, Pat. I know we've got about 15 or so minutes left and a number of topics to cover. So I'm going to jump over to the topic of digital construction platforms, and just want to ask the group here, how do digital construction platforms enhance transparency and efficiency in project management? How do you ensure that you're getting the most out of these types of platforms? And Craig, why don't we start with you again?
The fact that they're all cloud-based and I can get to them anywhere that I am sitting, whether it's Hawaii or Michigan or Ohio, that's awesome. So I think that's one thing. And then the other thing we try to do is this is where different size entities have different engagements, right? So some smaller communities, they just want you to deal with it. They don't want to get involved in it. Some larger communities or clients, hey, they want access, they want to see it. So I love being able to give them access to see the daily reports, to see the documentation as it's being created, to be able to see the real-time as-built right in the GIS, in Esri or something like that. So that aspect of it has been great. And then I've also been trying to push the contractors on our projects to say, hey, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to use Doc Express. We're going to do these things, and then embrace the digital signature aspects of it to try to keep that workflow going forward. That's the biggest thing. I mean, not everybody totally embraces it, unfortunately, but I think just having that flexibility and just trying to push that along is big. So.
Great. And maybe to add on to that, Kevin, if you want to talk a little bit about considerations, HNTB is all over the world, right? And has utilized tons of different technologies. What considerations do you think owners should keep in mind when selecting and implementing a digital construction platform?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to the previous topic, geolocation. That's one of the great things that a lot of this electronic data can be is geolocate to a particular, you could look at a map now and you can see hotspots from daily reports. You can see issues, and all of that can be geolocated now on a map. So yeah, when we actually are working right now in Texas, we're kind of integrating the daily reports, the dot control, the whole dot control world with a three-dimensional model so that we can actually view and see that progress, see where maybe we're not on schedule or whether we're ahead of schedule on those different tools. So, there's a lot of tools out there. There's a lot of tools available for the owners. And this is where us as the consultants can really help our owners, whether we're in, a PMC role or a GEC role. We can really help our owners kind of filter through all those different technologies and find the best one for them, depending on what it is and what's happening, what the type of project is or what type of data they want to collect. So it's a great opportunity for us to help our owners and help our clients perform better. And as we all talked about before, is, do things with less.
I'm going to give you a slightly different variation on construction platforms, Pat. How do you address interoperability challenges between legacy systems and new platforms, or just interoperability challenges overall? Can you speak to that some?
An excellent team led by Kathy James here in Montana does a great job looking forward at interoperability. She plays a big role in digital project delivery. And I'll speak specifically about a project that we're currently working on with our great partners at Infotech. We're currently working on integrating data between Civil 3D and Ashtoware Project, which of course is our construction management platform. And what that allows us to do is that allows us to actually tie civil objects or pay items to the construction portion. And it's just having, once again, data that moves from one technical silo to another. So you can remain, you don't have to worry about adding all new technology that's all in one. You get to use the current technology that you have and then share that data without having to recreate it. It allows for less mistakes. It allows for a better tie between the construction staff and the pre-construction staff. We've taken that one step forward. Now working with John Oberdeek, we're looking at how we can integrate Ashtoware Project with Esri, because we see Esri as a large tool that we'd like to pursue geospatially, once again, back to what Kevin said, and how we're going to be tying geospatial data, not necessarily just station and offset, but true geospatial data to assets that we can then look at the link between Esri and Autodesk or Esri and Civil 3D and have that paradigm of a connected data environment where we're continually using data, creating it once, using it many times, and taking those federated models all the way through the process to the construction team, then to the contractor. So it's exciting, and it's helping us move from legacy information into a more unified environment moving forward.
I want to expound on that a little bit, and I appreciate what you're saying there, Patrick. And I'm going to throw back a little bit of challenge to this industry, right? We all want to, I mean, regardless of the argument, if you like MicroStation or AutoCAD or whatever you like best, they all have their pros and cons. But the fact that we're now seeing the integrations of the different entities now talking and the kind of that open platform where, okay, we're used to using Appia, or we're used to using Ashtoware, or whatever that is, when you can start integrating them and start using all the tools that are out there in a common area, that's where I see the biggest benefit. So that's the challenge back as a consultant or this or to the industry, keep that up. We're looking for more of that because there's a dozen tools out there that all do it. None of them do it all, nor do we really want one that does it all. We want that flexibility, to use what works best.
Absolutely, Craig. And I can tell you that Montana, we like to consider ourselves a large advocate for open BIM and for, agnostic exports like IFC. We believe that working through FHWA, working with other DOTs throughout the country, software vendors, consultants, that we're on a path to truly create something that is agnostic. Because you bring up a great point, Craig. Not everyone, especially DOTs like Montana, can afford every technology piece that comes out. And so we want to invest our money in the projects and in the people. And if we can use open data to share information, not just internally, but externally, without having to require a contractor to purchase something, then we're going to be better suited for the future and create a true atmosphere of collaboration.
Great response. I had a question kind of teed up for common data environments or connected data environments, and I think we addressed it pretty well. You guys addressed it pretty well there. I didn't have to do any heavy lifting, so we're gonna skip over that. I know we're down to under our last 10 minutes here, and there's another session. I don't want to give everyone a chance to attend, so I'm going to kind of jump forward to model technology. That was one of the topics in the poll that everybody was pretty interested in hearing about, it looked like. So, as the industry moves toward model as the legal document or model as the legal deliverable, kind of depending on your frame of terminology that you like, how have each of your perspectives worked to address the gaps between modeling for estimating and modeling for contractual files? I think Andy Martin and Terry Klein in the earlier session today kind of touched on some of these topics pretty well. So I'm curious this panel's opinion on that. So Craig, why don't we start with you again, then we'll go to Kevin and then Pat.
Yeah, I think it's going to have to start at the kind of the beginning part, the data collection side, and start that easy collection and then go all the way through. But I think it's going to take more collaboration between the design group and the construction group. What is it that we really want, and what's important to us? Because a modeler might, hey, it's really important that we get this connection just right down to the best detail. Well, it might be more important from the construction side, like Pat said earlier, that you tie the construction pay item to that and some of the materials associated with that. So that information flows through, because that's what we need to track. And then on top of that is, where does that future asset management come into play? So how do you get the pictures and document what's really was installed or how it was built? So 10 years from now, they can pull up something and say, oh, that's what happened. That's why we need to, do this maintenance on it, those kind of things. So it's going to take a lot more communication, to get it to work the way we envision it to, I think.
Yeah, I agree, Craig. That's one thing. I was a part of the Utah model-based design committee back probably 8 or 9 years ago, when Utah finally, and again, as Pat mentioned, leadership from the top, their DOT director said, you shall be the front runner, and they did. And it was interesting because we had these different workshops with contractors, designers, DOT, vendors, we had all these different people in there, and we would sit down with a set of plans and be like, okay, designers know that, we need this. Contractors are like, I don't care about that, so we don't need that. So then it was a very eye-opening experience to be able to look at a set of plans and say, okay, yeah, 75% of this we probably don't really need, because that 75% is needed for the DOT reviewer to review the plans, but not for the contractor to build it. So then you need to look at that. And then one of the other things that came out of the meetings was the contractors were not happy with the survey and the survey requirements. So Utah actually rewrote their survey spec like 3 different times to get it tighter and better, so that the contractors could say, yes, I can build to that. And so it's interesting to see how this is all transpired across the different, the different states. Obviously, everybody looks to Utah because they were kind of the first ones, but, New York State let a model as a legal document back in 2019, and it was a bridge job, and it was a, roadway and bridge project. And, Florida has been doing signed and sealed earthwork files for a long time as well, because that's the way that they want to see things. And it's interesting because you mentioned, we want to go back and look at it in 20 years, and maybe the designer wants to develop this full 3D model guardrail and all this other stuff, but yet maintenance just wants it to be a line and a dot. So there's a lot of communication that needs to happen with Craig. I completely agree. And people need to get on board with what that is and how it's going to happen. And contract and construction specifications are going to need to change to be able to make that stuff happen. So, Pat, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that the way we're approaching model as a legal document is, we hope that it will become a benefit of our digital project delivery program. It's not something that here in Montana we have set up as a place to be. It's not a destination per se for us. It's a benefit of the journey. And I can only say that when you look at the data, the intelligence, and how that's brought together and shared, if you have rich data, and we get back to what Kevin said about the survey, the engineering survey plays a critical role. Do you have enough data to truly put that in a contractual model? Is your level of design, or LOD, level of development, evolved enough to truly use that model as a contract? And lastly, do just because you can, does it mean you should? We're taking the approach where we still believe in two-dimensional deliverables for potentially pavement preservation projects, and for other things. If there's earthwork involved, the model is critical because it can help with so many things. But I think moderation and understanding what your customer needs, the bottom line is creating something that can be constructed. And it's critical that I continue to communicate that. We're not just detailing and designing because we can, but let's understand what our contractors need, what our construction teams need. Let's provide them that really well. And let's talk to them about what that is. One of the things we just came across is we had a lot of time and hours being spent modeling roundabouts, and we were actually cutting cross sections within roundabouts. And with today's technology, after speaking with several contractors, we realized, like Kevin said, they don't use that data. To them, it's just noise. And so we were able to save a lot of design time and money by not having to provide something that was never used. And I think that's where Kevin hits the nail on the head. Communicating, talking to people, finding out what does the consumer or your customer need, and how can you give them that really well, and then talk about the extras that might make sense later.
Thanks, Pat. I would encourage everyone again to place any questions that you have in the Q&A. I know that we are getting toward the end of our time here, but we will address those questions with the recording for everyone. So apologies that we didn't get to more of those questions, but we do have a couple captured, and we'll make sure, actually more than a couple, but we'll make sure that those get addressed with a copy of the recording. But we do want to give everyone enough time to get to the next session. And I do want to have time to just express my gratitude and thanks to Craig, Kevin, and Pat for taking the time and providing, their expertise and knowledge around this. Thank you guys so much. That was a wonderful session, and I'm truly humbled to have been able to be a part of it. So thank you so much. And for everybody else, there is going to be another session moderated by Ron Gant with Keith Warren from Autodesk, Gary Waters from Esri, and Ed Chappelle from Trimble. So another great panel there. Hope you have an opportunity to attend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.